So I made that latte, the beet latte, out of that recipe book. Eat more plants. And I gave a little glass to James there, but really he has the bell pepper, yellow bell pepper juice, the last of my apples juiced with sour green grape, and carrot juice. It just has some beet because I did the beet first, right? Anyway, and
that's the beet latte.
That's the beet latte. So that one's warm, like hot chocolate. It has, well, I used almond milk, beet juice. I used honey instead of maple syrup, rose water, vanilla extract, and ground cardamom. So that's what the flavor of that's going to be. And that comes from Eat More Plants by Desiree Nielsen.
You were looking at that yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of like that, but yeah.
Well, it's
attractive.
It's an attractive cover for young urban vegetarian person.
You've characterized very accurately. No.
I mean, she does things in here like when I see, like, some of the pictures are her fingernails painted black, and
not even
honestly,
purple, eh? See, it should have been purple against that
like
yellow.
she seems to like the black fingernails.
Okay.
Or maybe that's a navy blue. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
that might
it's
be
more
a
like
navy
a blue, but
yeah. But anyway, when I see painted fingernails in recipe books, I get icked out, honestly, because you shouldn't have painted fingernails when you're trying to work with food. No.
And you're saying maybe some of the stuff leaches out.
No, I don't. It could flake off or something, or it could,
It doesn't look like it.
I mean, I can understand why she might want to paint her fingernails for the picture, because if she is actually cooked, if she cooks like I do, my hands right now are fairly purple.
Yeah.
Because I was dealing with beets.
Yeah.
And because I juice a lot, I often have pulp underneath in my fingernails. It's just, I'd have to be cleaning my fingernails several times a day because we're juicing several times a day. So that just seems ridiculous to me. I don't find the pulp really dirty, so it stays there a lot of the time. I'll clean out some of it, and it's not that great. You can see some of it. Anyway, James is going to talk about the politically incorrect guide to socialism.
The politically incorrect guide to socialism. They have a whole suite of books, maybe a dozen of them, and that's time of this publication is 2011. Maybe they've got a few more, maybe a whole lot more. So on the cover, here's Karl Marx with his hand Napoleon style, kind of in his, like playing around with his chest hairs or whatever. And he's wearing an Obama button, right? So a little over the top.
Somebody
here.
got creative.
Yeah, so their little logo is a pig here, so politically incorrect guide, that's their acronym is PIG, pig. So these guys are, I think, male chauvinist pigs. They're probably mainly guys. They must be for the record. But here's some of their titles. Politically how many were there? Did I say there was 12? See, I got it exactly right. Try to estimate these things. I'm usually totally wrong, but this is one case where I'm totally right. Anyway, the politically incorrect guide to American history. It looks like it's got Robert E. Lee, Southern General from the Civil War, or something like that. He's got the big saber there. And you're going, like what are they talking about? Politically incorrect guide to global warming, and that probably just makes some people who prefer that term. What is it? Climate change? Just grit their teeth. There's something wrong with global warming as a designation. I'm not sure exactly what. Politically incorrect guide to Islam. I've read that, and that one's maybe too interesting to be comfortable reading. Politically Incorrect Guide to the Civil War, so it's got maybe Jeb Stuart on the cover, some Southern general or something like that. Confederate flag in the background. You're going, yeah, what could these guys be saying? A politically incorrect guide to the Constitution. Oh yeah, the right to bear arms, all that sort of stuff. What's on the cover?
It's actually quite delicious. I have to say, it's a good recipe.
Well, it's good. I'm looking forward to Politically Incorrect Guide to Science. And you're wondering if it's creation science on the cover. I think it's probably Dolly, the gold sheep. But
it tastes like gulab jamun.
Politically Incorrect Guide to Women's Sex and Feminism, and then it's got a 50s looking woman, I think dressed as a bride or something like that. Politically Incorrect Guide to Darwinism and Intelligent Design. I think this is going to be about creationism. So it's got a monkey sitting on a sofa with a newspaper and stuff like that. I don't know if the monkey's reading, like The Guardian from Manchester is a left-wing paper down there. They probably think a left-wing paper is the New York Times. English and American, Politically Incorrect Guide to English and American Literature's got Shakespeare. I don't know what they could have come up with that would be...
But honestly, people... There's a lot of people who make fun of, or I've talked to a lot of people who they would think they were enlightened. They're NDPers or whatever, right?
Oh yeah.
And
they all do. Okay, go ahead.
And as soon as I start talking about the intelligence of other species of animals or something like that, not even getting into plants, which believe me, I could get into that. But I'm careful about what I talk about because I'm treated like a total moron or like some sort of plague, very spiritual. I don't know. Anyway, when I talk about animal intelligence and
the thing is, you actually you'd read way more nonfiction than them. Much more critically, most of these flunkies are yellows, right?
And I'm not, Chihuahuas, I think they have a lot of problems. They have, it's not that they're not bright, they're smart, but they have, I don't know, like Elvis has some sort of
they're screwed
ADD
up. It's like what I say about the 60s generation. The most
really
intelligent generation of the 20th century, but
so it's
maybe
hard
closest to screwed up.
Actually teach them something, right? But they'll learn. Like the other. Okay, last night, just every day there's something. We talk to them. So I said to Elvis and Annaford were in bed with me, and they were on top of the covers. They kept sleeping on top of the covers, and I'm like, I'm freezing, you guys. You got to help keep me warm, so you got to get under the covers. So they both went under the covers. I didn't motion at them. I didn't do anything. So either they're psychic and they can read my mind, or they actually understood what I was saying. And this is every day. We talk to them and they listen. They don't understand everything. And if they
every so occasionally I try to talk quantum physics to them.
Yeah.
And they don't understand. They kind of, their heads go like this. But when I read quantum physics stuff, my head kind of goes like this too. Actually, it is nonsense. That wasn't a good example. But it was actually intended. At any rate,
You know what I'm saying? They actually understand. They can learn. And honestly, if you have the right motivation, I can't see why you couldn't teach a chimpanzee to sit there and read the newspaper.
You're right. You need motivation, like bananas or whatever.
I don't know.
Eating, right?
Some reason why they would want to read it.
Exactly right. So there you go. Some coconuts. It's better. Anyway, it looks as though they don't have much to say about English and American literature. I might have more to say. At least they don't. Shakespeare. Okay, the Politically Incorrect Guide to the South. What is this? Like this, out of 12 titles, they've got, here's a Confederate flag. So they got a bee in their bonnet about the South and stuff like that. It looks as though they think the South will rise again. I think one of their subtitles was, the South will rise again and it should, or something like that. Politically Incorrect Guide to Capitalism. Well, I could give them a guide to capitalism that they wouldn't like terribly much. Or the Politically Incorrect Guide to Hunting. So, yeah, that's probably about the right to bear arms. Now, here's what they've got inside here. You think you know about socialism, but did you know that socialism, and then, instead of bullets here, they've got hammer and sickle, which is ridiculous. The hammer and sickle is ridiculous. Marx would be turning over in his grave if he actually wasn't really seriously dead, because the hammer stands for a worker, and sickle stands for a peasant. So that gets down to what I say. For Lenin, it was a constant soundbite. We are going to have our revolution of the workers and the peasants. And Marx would just be laughing and crying or gritting his teeth or whatever. You can't have a revolution, according to Marx, of a workers and peasants. But, so it's a paradox right there on their little symbol, the hammer and sickle. So did you know that socialism is almost always ultranationalist and militarist? How can you say that? It's terrible for the environment. Benefits just one group of people, the central planners themselves. Is not even successful in model socialist countries like Sweden. And that's heresy, right? Exists throughout the U.S. economy. Okay, so most of these things are just like over the top. But exists throughout the U.S. economy. There's some strains of socialism in the U.S. economy. The United States is not nearly the paleo-liberal entity it was, let's say, 120 years ago. It's not even successful in model countries, socialist countries like Sweden. Well, it's not gloriously successful there. They raise a point that might be true, that the average Swede in the United States makes basically what the average Swede does. Sweden basically has the same longevity and things like that, So they're saying there's maybe something other than, like healthcare systems actually working in social democracies like Sweden. And I'm going, maybe they got a point there, something to be looked into. Like when I read something that I'm hostile to or not that friendly to, I kind of take their argument points and say, maybe I got to look at them. Benefits just one group of people, the central planners themselves. Well, it wasn't central planners. It wasn't even the central planners that were benefited in the Soviet Union, right? So socialism will include a lot of it. It's terrible for the environment. In the Soviet Union, it looked to be pretty darn bad. Of course, capitalism ain't that bad for the environment either. As almost always ultranationalists and militarists, I know someone who I said, basically, if you look at socialism in its when it's actually been realized, most of the time, when it says almost always, that's a bit much, but most of the time it's ended up being nationalist. To call it ultra-nationalist is maybe
but I would argue that socialism hasn't been actually realized. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, our society is to a point where we might actually have it. It might.
You mean like Canada or the United States? There's quite a difference, but okay.
And some European countries might actually have it, but that might happen 100 years from now, and that's only under ideal circumstances.
It might. I mean,
I would say none are. So what? Are they looking at?
Well, they're looking
countries
at
that call themselves socialist.
Sure.
Because I don't see any.
Yeah, exactly right. Now the thing is, a lot of countries actually have claim to be it, and we've got to actually look at them all. We can't just say look at. They're looking at socialism. They're not looking at social democracy, strictly speaking. And when I look, even before this sort of thing, I'd noticed this pattern. Generally, socialist regimes have tended to be nationalist either at the beginning or work that way. So Mexico had a socialist revolution, kind of turned out to be a little bit nationalist. What was the Nazi party called? The National Socialist Workers, German Workers' Party. So half of it was nationalist in the title, and half of it was socialist. In other words, socialist.
I would say none have been socialist though, or they wouldn't have one dictator who's calling the shots for the whole country. You don't have one leader. If in a socialist, an actual socialist country, you can't have one leader because it doesn't even make sense.
It's got to be a social democracy for it to be socialist. And what I'd maintain is it really has to be not so much sharing of goods, but sharing of power. So it's really a social democracy. Now, when I say that to social democrats, they will. One person actually said, "Well, if you have the socialism, the democracy takes care of itself." Well, history is full of all sorts of counterexamples. That's just nonsense. And most of them would say social democracy. No, for me, you can't have socialism if there's not sharing, as you say, of democratic power democratically, right?
And that can only happen once you have education, once people actually value education, because then you have the proper person who is going to make decisions, say, for the environment, or the proper panel of people who will, and the people who've elected the panel will recognize that these people are actually capable of making these decisions. You can't have, like, what do we have right now? We have a drama teacher who's making decisions for everything.
Who's worked in blackface. So.
Well, that's great, but as long as he realizes that he's just a puppet and there's other people that are making decisions under him, then it might work out okay if the people under him are actually capable of making those decisions. But I mean, really, have we elected them? Do we know? So all we've elected is a puppet. So is it really a democracy that is running the show?
Well, there's always a problem with representative democracy. There are problems with direct democracy. They had something.
I mean, I love our system of parliament and stuff.
I don't love it, but I sure hate the alternatives, including the American system. But our parliamentary system has got problems. At any rate, like even if you look at, like Gandhi's maybe something of a youthful hero for me and stuff like that. And, he set up something in place that was certainly a lot better than what happened in neighboring Pakistan, which is just like a basket case. I'm not going to call it a failed country, but it looks as though it's in the process of failing. So, I'm not thrilled about Modi and the BJP and stuff like that. But this person points out that, and it might be true, it might not be, I'm going to have to check it out, that under Nehru and his successors, the Indian economy, its share of world trade went down in the space of maybe generation and a half, 2 generations, less than 2 generations, went from about 45, which is a little bit before independence, to 2000, I think was the bracketing dates that it used, went down from 2.2%, which is low. I mean, this is a lot of the world's population, and it's a fairly large country. Like right now, it might be sitting at 1/5 of the world's population or something like that. So it should be something like 20% of the world's trade went from 2.2, which is 1/10 of what it should be, to 0.5. And that might be true. That system wasn't working. So they had something like a socialist system, and it was something like a social democracy, but it wasn't working economically. Stuff has got to work economically. They were using stupid things like 5-year plans, which means that they were kind of like aping the Soviets and stuff like that. Why would you want to do that? Now they started it off early, but they should have known that the Soviets were lying when they were giving out their stats. So in terms of socialism, in its actual realization, being nationalist, even the Soviets themselves turned to it. This is under Stalin. They became nationalists in the 30s and stuff like that. And the usual response is, oh, that was just a response to the Nazis. It might have been to a certain extent. I think there were other factors involved. Like even before Stalin started instituting it, they were yapping about socialism in one country and stuff like that. But you look at the, like it was kind of socialist and democratic what was happening with the Chinese Revolution, 1911, 1912. It wasn't too long. Within 20 years, you've got the nationalists taking over. Chiang Kai-shek. How left-wing was he? Well, the Soviets were demanding of Mao Zedong in the 20s that he knuckle under to Chiang Kai-shek. So Mexico kind of, I think the reason why it didn't go really rabidly nationalist is because, the Americans were actually, in world terms, and I'm looking in terms of the whole world, and in terms of world history, were actually pretty bland when it came to the Mexicans. That isn't to say that they were nice and not interventionists and stuff like that, but the Mexicans didn't have to worry about a bunch of people invading, and it's not just the Americans, a bunch of people from the South. I mean, Latin America kind of tails off into nothingness almost. The Isthmus of Panama is, you could, if it weren't so jungle, you could maybe walk across it in a couple of days. Probably. But there's stuff in here that's, and yeah, I was mentioning the Nazis. They were socialists to begin with. The blue shirts, Chiang Kai-shek, were socialists to begin with, and they basically domestically had socialist kind of policies. When it came to the foreign policy, it was very nationalist.
You still have plenty of time.
You still got plenty of time. Anyway, it's some of it is, well, it's basically over the top. Like I think it's possible to have something like a social democracy. The emphasis on democracy. I don't really believe in heavy transfer payments. Here's what I believe in: transfer payments to people. Like if they're healthy and young and stuff like that. And we're not dealing with kids. I believe in transfer payments for kids, but direct transfer payment, like in terms of goods, not money. You don't give money to the parents because it doesn't make it to the kids in enough cases. That just seems silly. Maybe that is kind of like bad for the people's self-esteem, but I don't care about principles.
No.
I care about getting the stuff to the kids. If the parents are drinking it away, how does that help? It helps their self-esteem. Maybe in 1% of the cases, 10% of the cases, 50% of the cases. What happens to the other 50% of the cases? I want the stuff to actually make it to the kids.
Yeah, it would be better to have for low-income families, well, for everyone, if they want it, to have daycare and schools which provide healthy foods.
Yeah.
And you don't have to eat the foods. If you're a wealthier person and you would like your child eating a specialized diet, well, they can eat that. Or if you have religious dietary I don't know, whatever, then maybe you want to make different kinds of foods for your kids or whatever, but it should be available for kids. It should be there.
So this self-esteem thing, they've been doing that in schools and it don't really work. Some of the stupidest, right-wingedest, I'm wanting to use cuss words and I'm not wanting to. People that I've run across have had self-esteems that are through the ceiling and through the roof. Self-esteem, what is that about?
No, if you don't have the education or whatever to hang that on, confidence is such a dangerous thing.
So, George Bush Jr. So here's the deal. Like I actually believe in free education, so long as and this goes all the way up. So long as you're getting passing grades, you got to get the passing grades. You can't be a professional student and do that on my coin and on Pauline's coin, and frankly on anyone else's coin. But here's the other deal. I actually believe in unemployment insurance and pretty good benefits. But the deal is you actually got to go to school. The school the school would be provided free for anyone. But guess what? You'd have to get the grades. So the deal is you'd have to try to make yourself more employable. So yeah, it wouldn't just come with no strings attached. You're going to have to do some work. You're going to have to do some work one way or another. And it's not make-work projects and stuff like that. You might have to have some constraints. You know, if some people are just making themselves unemployable by taking art programs out there where they're dashing paint on the floor or stuff like that, doing the Jackson Pollock thing long after it was useless in the first place. So yeah, so just transfer payments. The first government to ever do it was a right-wing government, and pretty right-wing at that. The Bismarck government. It was a long time ago. It's almost like 150 years ago. So you can do transfer payment kind of socialism and stuff like that, and it really doesn't get you much anywhere. So, you know, with certain provisos, you know, like I'd like to see transfer payments, but it'd have to be, you know, like a lot of it directly to kids. Kids shouldn't be made to bear the responsibility for their parents' laziness and stupidity and all sorts of, and ignorance. But yeah.
And addiction.
And addictions,
I mean,
which go beyond stupidity.
Yeah.
It's just like people can be very screwed up, right?
Yeah.
So, be very smart at the same time. Anyway, that's about that. I actually, do I recommend reading that sort of stuff? Yeah, to know what's happening out there and to know that there's some stuff, you know, that's sobering. Yeah, I don't know if it's true about India's share of the foreign trade going down from 2.2 in less than 2 generations, 2.2 to 0.5. You know, whereas it should have been going up to somewhere around 20% based on the population. You know, there was something wrong with that system. It wasn't working. I understand Gandhi and Nehru were huge heroes of mine.
There were problems with
45 to about 2000.
Well, there were problems with the Green Revolution. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to look at what's responsible for that. It might not be socialism. It might be something else.
Well, you see, there were places that had huge overpopulation, where their share of the world economy just shot up. Japan was in ruins in 1945. India wasn't.
Yeah, Japan, that's a different matter. I mean, once, now that Japan's on its own, how's it doing?
Well, they were getting supported by the United States.
Yeah.
So there was a Marshall Plan for Japan.
Yeah.
There was for Germany as well, and the German economy.
Okay, well, how's the Japanese economy doing since that?
Well, it's a lot better than the Indian economy. Since the end of the Cold War, the Japanese economy has been going down somewhat. But, you know, there's no way that it would be down at the level that India is. You know? So you could look at other places like, one of the places that two places they mention are Hong Kong and Singapore.
Okay,
and
but you could also look at other things, say religion in India compared to Japan might play a major...
Yeah. So religion was a problem in Japan, and I've had I've run across people who blamed it on Buddhism, you know, first thought, best thought. And it resulted in, you know, just going rashly for militarism. I think it was actually Shintoism. Shintoism, I think generally if we looked at it, we'd find out that the ancestor worship lends itself to nationalism. There have been certain cases ultra-nationalism. And pantheism tends to result, well, also ancestor worship places that are pantheistic would tend to be more amenable